Voted for medical marijuana last year, frustrated, barely covers it with what happened today, especially. It might be an understatement. Dozens of Nebraskans urging state officials to ease proposed restrictions on medical marijuana, but no commissioners showed up to listen.
Yeah, Nebraskans overwhelmingly approved, you'll remember, medical marijuana nearly a year ago. An upcoming vote with the Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission will finalize regulations. Our Andrew Pfeiffer joins us live in the newsroom with what people are saying. Andrew?
Brian, Jacqueline, if you're one of the 71% who voted yes on medical marijuana, you should know advocates spoke up for you today. They voiced their final messages about proposed regulations before commissioners make a final decision next month. The hearing started at 1 this afternoon. It ran a couple of hours with many folks sharing stories, explaining the positive benefits of medical marijuana. You'll remember in November of last year, Nebraskans approved 2 ballot initiatives to legalize and regulate medical marijuana. Attorney General Mike Hilgers sued to challenge the ballot measures after voters approved them. However, a judge dismissed that lawsuit. And since then, Governor Jim Pillen has made calls for stricter limits, and the Medical Marijuana Commission proposed rules that would limit dispensaries, restrict cultivation, and ban certain products. If you're feeling frustrated, you're not alone. Here's what one advocate told officials.
The Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission has broken the law as voted on and determined by the citizens of Nebraska. The rules and regulations of the Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission, under the influence of Jim Pillen, Pete Ricketts, and Mike Hilgers, not only violate my patients' rights, but also medically harm me while restricting and silencing my healthcare providers.
Today, only advocates for medical marijuana spoke, and there was no opposition siding with the proposed regulations. Again, no commissioners attended today's hearing. Their next meeting is scheduled for November 3rd. If they finalize the regulations, Governor Jim Pillen and Attorney General Mike Hilgers would have to approve them. Live in the newsroom, Andrew Pfeiffer, First Alert 6.
All right, thanks for that update, Andrew.